right now, okay? So I'm going to record the session because if there are people that didn't have the chance to join the session, remember that you can see the session later on. So, as I was telling you, we are going to start with the learning forum and then with an example of how to do the integrating activity number 3 and the integrating activity number 4. And at the end, we're going to answer some questions and doubts. So, to do the learning forum, to participate in this learning forum, I suggest follow these steps. In your first participation, guys, you have to ask 3 questions in past to 3 people in the class, okay? That is your first participation. Ask 3 questions in past to 3 people in the class, okay? If you ask more than 3 questions, or if you ask to more than 3 people, it's okay. This is just the minimum questions and the minimum number of people that you can ask. After that, guys, you have to answer the questions. You have to answer the questions that your partner or your partners have asked you. If your partners don't ask you questions, I'm going to ask questions to you, okay? So here we have a person that is raising hands. Okay, and your third participation, guys, you are going to give us your conclusion. What is your conclusion? You have to come up with a conclusion of this learning forum. Remember that I suggest participating 3 times during the week. The first is at the beginning of the week, maybe from Monday to Wednesday. The second participation is maybe from Wednesday to Friday. And the last participation, that is the conclusion, can be at the weekend, all right? So this is the way you can participate in the learning forum. Remember, guys, that you can also use the grammar structure used to. Remember that we use used to talk about habits in the past and actions that we used to do as a habit, but that we don't do now, okay? For example, when I was a child, I used to watch a lot of cartoons. Now I don't. So you can use used to or past simple for making your questions. And in this part, guys, I am showing you some questions in past simple. These are just some examples. The first one says, what did you do? What did you do before studying Prepa CEP online? The answer, I worked in a restaurant. Where did you live before getting married? I lived with my parents. What did you used to watch on TV when you were a child? I used to watch cartoons. Can you see? Used to is for habits. But if you don't use this structure, it's okay. You need only past simple, right? Anyway, used to, this structure is used in questions in past with did. Remember that all the questions in past need an auxiliary. When we want to talk in past, we use did, okay? And the verb remains in its infinitive form, all right? Because we have the auxiliary, that is did. When we have an auxiliary, the verb remains in its infinitive form. You can also make yes/no questions. Remember that yes/no questions start with the auxiliary. In this case, the auxiliary of past simple is did. Did you use the internet before studying Prepa 7 online? Yes, I did. I checked my email. Did you used to play video games when you were a teenager? Yes, I did. I used to play Nintendo. Okay, so remember, these are just some examples of questions that you can ask to your partners in the forum. Okay, you also can make questions with verb be. Okay, remember that we have questions with verb be. So I'm going to write some questions, some examples of questions with verb be so that you can see. This is an example. Where? Where were you, for example, here? Where were you before for example, moving to Mexico City? Okay, let's suppose that this is a question that I'm going to ask to someone. I'm going to ask someone this question in the class, okay? But in this case, as you can see in my questions, in this question here, I don't use the auxiliary did. Why not? Because I'm using verb be. This is the verb be in past simple. And remember that the verb be functions as an auxiliary and as a verb. So where were you before moving to Mexico City? So you can say, I was in Querétaro. Okay, this can be the answer. Where were you before moving to Mexico City? I was in Querétaro. This is an example of a question with verb be. I'm going to write here, questions with a verb be in the past. Okay, my verb be in this case is this over here. I'm going to underline it. Another question with verb be in past can be, were you happy when you were a child? Okay, were you happy when you were a child? This is a yes/no question because we start the question with the auxiliary. In this case, the verb be. Were you happy when you were a child? And you can say, yes, I was very happy. Okay, this is another. Another question. Was your father a famous soccer player? Okay. This is another example of a question with verb be in past. So we can say, this is a yes/no question because we start with auxiliary. Was your father a famous soccer player? Yes. Yes, he was. You can also add something else. For example, he played for Pumas team. Okay, so these are the questions, guys, the examples of questions that you can ask in the learning forum of this week. Remember that the questions must be in past. You can use did, but also you can make questions with verb be in the past, as the ones that we have here at the end, okay? So, once you participate in the learning forum, we continue with integrating activity number 3. The name of this activity is A Happy Day. What you have to do in this activity, guys? Well, as you have already maybe seen the instructions, in this activity, you have to talk about the happiest day of your life, okay? But you have to explain this experience briefly, okay? So, for doing that, you have to follow some questions. You have to take into account some questions. These questions will guide your writing. So, the first question is, what was the happiest day of your life? This is the first question. The happiest day of my life was when, in this part, you have to explain briefly what was the happiest day of your life and when it happened, okay? That is the first paragraph. The second paragraph is what happened. In this paragraph, you have to explain very briefly what happened. You can use past simple and you can contrast the past simple with past continuous. We're going to see an example in a minute. Then you have, after that, guys, you have another question. How did you feel? How did you feel? In this paragraph, you have to use adjectives to describe your feelings at that moment. And finally, you have another question that says, why was the happiest day of your life? It was the happiest day of my life because in this paragraph, I expect you to mention some reasons why you consider that day the happiest day of your life, okay? So now I'm going to show you an example. Here we have. This is my example. This is a personal example that I want to share with you, okay? It says here, what was the happiest day of your life? The happiest day of my life was when I passed the admission exam for the university. What happened? And here we have. Although I did well in the examination, I was not so hopeful of getting a place at university. I was very much anxious because the question of my career was involved in it. A day earlier, when the result was expected to be published in the local newspapers, I spent a restless night. I, along with my friends, got up early in the morning and went to the newspaper stand on the way. So as you can see, in this paragraph, I explain briefly what happened. And I use past simple to explain all the actions, okay? I put the verbs in past simple in green. As you can see, I did well in the examination. I was not so hopeful. I was very much anxious. I got up early. I spent a restless night. And I also put in red some linking words or connectors, okay? We're going to see the connectors that you can use to organize your ideas better, okay? So I have already answered 2 questions. Then it says, how did you feel? Okay, this is the other question that you have to answer. How did you feel? I felt very happy. I was shouting aloud when I saw my number printer on the newspaper. My voice was piercing my heart. I hurriedly bought the paper and started spouting out my roll number. Yes. So in this part, guys, you have to use adjectives to describe how you felt at that moment, okay? So we can say, I felt happy, right? And then I also use past continuous because I am describing what I was doing at that specific time, okay? I was shouting, and I contrast the past continuous with the past simple with when. Can you see? I was shouting aloud when I saw my number printer on the newspaper. My voice was piercing my heart. I hurriedly bought the paper and started spouting out my roll number. The next question is, why was the happiest day of your life? It was the happiest day of my life because I got a place at my local university and my parents were very proud of me. And that's it. So as you can see in all the paragraphs, you need to use past simple. You can contrast past simple with past continuous, as you can see in this example. And I put here a link. In this link, guys, you can have a list of linking words. So let's go to this link. I'm going to show you very quickly the linking words that you can use to organize your ideas in your writing. So I'm going to share the screen for you to see the linking words that I'm telling you about. So okay, guys, this is the link. If you give a click to the link, you will find the linking words. What are linking words in Spanish? Conectores. In Spanish, we call them conectores, okay? What are they used for? These linking words are very useful to connect ideas and to organize your ideas in a paragraph better, okay? So the importance of using linking words has to do with the organization of your ideas in a paragraph. So the linking words have different functions. What are the functions of linking words? ¿Cuáles son las funciones de las palabras conectoras? We have some functions. Giving examples. And here we have, for example, for instance, etc. Another function of linking word, adding information. Usamos también los conectores para agregar información. Y aquí tenemos algunos ejemplos. And, in addition, as well as, also, furthermore, moreover, etc. Okay? And we have some examples here. Ideas are often linked by and in a list. You put a comma between each item, but not before and. So here we have some, rules to use these linking words. And some examples. Also, we can have linking words to summarize ideas, okay? To summarize ideas, like in short, in brief, in summary, to summarize, in a nutshell, to conclude, in conclusion. The most common that we use is in conclusion or to conclude, okay? But here you have more words that you can use to summarize your ideas. Also, we can use a linking words when we need to list ideas. Like the first point is the former, the later, firstly, secondly, finally, lastly. Yes? For example, the former and the later are useful when you want to refer to one of 2 points. Firstly, secondly, finally, or lastly are useful ways to list ideas. Also, we can say the first point, the second, the third point, and so on. We also use linking words to give reasons. Usamos también los conectores para dar razones. Okay? The most common is because. But also you can use since or as, due to the fact that, owing to the fact that. Due to and owing to must be followed by a noun. Due to the rise of oil prices, the inflation rate rose by 1.25%. Okay? So these are. And also we have linking words to give a result. The most common that we use is so, but you can say therefore, consequently, this means that, as a result. Example, the company are expanding, therefore, so, consequently, as a result, they are taking on extra staff. Contrasting ideas, okay? To contrast, remember, to contrast the past simple with past continuous, we can use while and we can use when. But to contrast ideas in general, we use but, however, although, despite the fact that, nevertheless, nonetheless, while, whereas, unlike, in theory. But is more informal than however. Example, he works hard, however, he doesn't earn much. He works hard, but he doesn't earn much. Remember, when we use these words, it's because we are contrasting ideas. Él trabaja duro, pero no gana mucho. Él trabaja duro, sin embargo, no gana mucho. Okay? So we use these linking words to contrast ideas. So you can use these words, guys, to organize your ideas in the paragraph that you have to write about the happiest day of your life. Okay? So I leave the link in the PowerPoint presentation for you to check later. Okay? I found it very useful. I hope you find it useful as well. So now let's go back to the presentation. Let's go back to the presentation, guys. And let's see. This is the linking word. This is the link. Check it later. Okay, and now after the paragraph about the happiest day of your life, you have to answer another question that says, why is it important to know about past events? To answer the question, I suggest using linking words to list ideas, okay? These are the linking words that I suggest to organize your ideas. And I give you an example. It is important to know about past events for many important reasons. First, because I learn about the history of my family, and that allows me to understand what my origins are and where I come from. Second, it is essential to get a sense of identity to understand how we behave in society. Third, it is important to know about past in terms of medical questions, which affect my children, so I can take care better about my health. Last but not least, also you can say here, finally, if you want. Okay, another linking word that you can use here is finally, and it's the same. Finally, or last but not least, without knowing anything of my history, I cannot make important decisions. All right, guys? So, as you can see, in order to organize your ideas better, I suggest using linking words. In this case, the linking words that you are going to use here are for listing ideas. Okay, so this is just an example of how you can answer this question. Okay, now let's go to the second activity, making my family timeline. For this activity, guys, I'm going to explain it very briefly. You have to download Making My Life Time. This is the file that you have to download. And you have to ask 10 questions in past simple. And you have to translate the questions into Spanish to a member of your family, okay? So you have to choose a member of your family to ask these 10 questions. The questions, again, must be in past simple. You can use WH questions or yes/no questions. Example, did you live in Mexico when you were a child? Were your grandparents from Mexico City? An example of a WH question. Where did you meet your wife? When did you get married? Okay, these are the questions. Remember that these questions must be translated into Spanish as well. Okay, so you have to write the 10 questions in English and the 10 questions in Spanish. Once you have your questions, the next thing that you have to do is to draw a timeline. For doing that, you can see the video of how to do a timeline in YouTube, okay? And you have to record what you put in your timeline. For example, this is my timeline, and I chose these dates: 1950, 1965, 1976, 1986, 1998, and 2014. The timeline was about my grandfather's life. So in the recording, I'm just going to say, in 1950, my grandfather joined a new school. In 1965, he met Pat and became good friends. In 1976, he learned baseball at a summer camp. In 1986, he won the match against public school. In 1998, he joined the Scouts and learned CPR. In 2014, a truck hit him, but I saved his life, okay? So this is the way you are going to do your timeline. In the timeline, you are going to write maybe just one sentence with the verb in past simple, and then in the recording, you are going to mention the date and the whole sentence. And that is what you have to do in your timeline. After that, guys, after you record your timeline, you have to write a brief paragraph where you explain your experience about the life of a member of your family. Example, I'm so very grateful to have my grandfather as my hero. My grandfather taught me to live in a full life, to be happy and grateful. My grandfather taught me to work hard and not to complain, okay? So this is what you have to do. In this paragraph, you have to explain, remember, briefly the experience to know about the life of any member of your family. And As you can see, my paragraph is composed by only 3 lines. It's fine, it's okay. I don't want you to write too much about it. Right? Finally, guys, I just put some uses of verb be. These are some uses of verb be. Remember that verb be can be used for origin, can be used for mood. What is mood? Mood es un estado en el que te encuentres. For example, I'm tired. The verb be can be used for occupation, nationality, to talk about the weather, to describe your marital status, and to talk about age. So when you make a question with verb be, you have to take into account these functions. Okay? Si ustedes quieren hacer una pregunta con verbo ser o estar en pasado, tienen que tomar en cuenta las funciones del verbo ser o estar en pasado. Por eso las puse aquí, porque pienso que son importantes. Primero, conocer las funciones del verbo ser o estar en pasado para que ustedes puedan realizar las preguntas. Por ejemplo, where was my grandma from? Where was my grandma from? Ahí estoy preguntando de dónde era mi abuela, ¿ok? ¿Qué le estoy preguntando sobre el origen, sobre esta función? La siguiente función. Were you happy when you were a child? ¿Eras feliz cuando eras niño? Pues aquí estamos hablando de la siguiente, de esta función, mood, ¿ok? Ahora, what nationality was your father? ¿De qué nacionalidad era tu padre? Aquí estoy hablando de esta función, nationality, ¿ok? Bueno, ahora, did you work in a company when you were young? Aquí estoy usando verbo ser o estar, pero también estoy utilizando otro verbo que es work, pero en pasado, ¿ok? Porque tengo mi auxiliar did. Did you work in a company when you were young? ¿Trabajabas en una compañía cuando eras joven? What did you do 35 years ago? ¿Qué hacías hace 35 años? Okay? So these are the questions that you can use for your second activity. Okay? Guys, so far, so good, guys. Now, I'm going to check if you have any questions. Si tienen alguna pregunta, me la pueden hacer en este momento. ¿Tienen alguna pregunta, chicos? Recuerden que esta presentación que les estoy mostrando también se las voy a enviar para que ustedes la puedan revisar en el momento en el que ustedes lo decidan. ¿Alguna pregunta? ¿Alguna duda? La pantalla, sí, la estoy haciendo lo más grande que puedo. La pantalla, sí, Pero mira, no, si no lo pudiste ver bien algunas cosas, no te preocupes. Esta misma presentación la vas a poder ver cuando se las envíe en un momento, ¿ok? Bueno, ¿tienen alguna duda? ¿Preguntas? Las preguntas en inglés son las mismas que en español, sí, son las mismas. Ok. Bueno, les cuesta, me menciona una compañera que le cuesta trabajo entender la clase en inglés. No, no se preocupen, la siguiente clase la hago, voy haciéndolo en ambos idiomas. Con respecto al audio, ¿cuál es el tiempo? Tienen 1 minuto 30. Tienen 1 minuto 30 máximo para realizar el audio, ¿ok? No debe de ser más de 1 minuto 30. Ni tampoco menos. Bueno, tienen que saber que yo no los penalizo si hacen más, ¿ok? Pero sí los penalizo si hacen menos. Si hacen menos de lo que viene ahí en las instrucciones, sí los penalizo. Pero si hacen más, no hay problema. Las preguntas sí las deben de contestar. Recuerden que son preguntas con su traducción en español y respuestas con su traducción en español. Bueno, si tienen alguna otra pregunta, me la pueden hacer saber también. Los párrafos de 5 a 8, bueno, como de 5 a 8 líneas, sí. Si tienes 4 o 3 líneas está bien, no hay problema. Ajá, exactamente. La segunda actividad sí es en inglés y en español. La primera no, la primera es todo en